Hello, good evening and welcome to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. This bulletin is live from our studio here at Adesawe Kanda in Accra and also live around the world on 3news.com. Coming up this evening, several communities in Anglo risk being washed away by the sea following a destruction of a sandbar that separated the sea from the Volta Lake.
But it will clear Anglaga. The rest of Qatar be on his way. It will clear Alakule. It will clear Anyaku.
We'll delve into this particular story in a jiffy, and we shall take you live to the location where the chiefs say they are not happy about the development. Also coming up in the bulletin, as Parliament prepares to reconsider the anti-LGBTQ bill, issues arise as to which ministry should lead the implementation drive.
Let me assure Ghanaians that this will be considered on the floor of Parliament with the principles of justice, fairness, and human dignity.
Those are excerpts of today's sitting, and we'll let you know how it all ended and when this will be laid in Parliament for the consideration to continue. And before the bulletin ends, we'll take you to South Africa. Following the recent xenophobic attacks, the South African Ministry of Police have strongly condemned recent xenophobic attacks directed at Ghanaian nationals, promising to identify and apprehend the perpetrators. We'll be live in South Africa after a protest march, which we are told started yesterday. To date, there have been other marches. We are told that in the coming days, more such protests are planned. We'll update you on all of this and find out how Ghanaians are doing in the region. This is 3FM 92.7. Stay with us. Details of all these stories and more in a moment. Let's settle for the details of our stories now. Like I indicated, my name is Martin Asiedu-Dartey. We are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube, so do send us the messages that you have on the many stories we have for you this evening. Starting from Parliament, the minority on the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee says the anti-LGBTQ bill must be passed under a certificate of urgency when Parliament resumes in May to make its implementation faster. But chairperson of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, Shaibu Mahama, says whether certificate of urgency or not, the important thing is not having a president who would refuse to assent to the bill. This was part of many conversations that transpired. Let's listen in.
This, we all agree, is a bill which has received more public interest than any other bill I'm aware of in the last 10 years. There's a bill that has become a topical campaign promise. In fact, from Osajefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, our first president, till now, this is the only bill that we have had presidential candidates expressly and specifically making campaign promises tied to the passage, the assenting, and implementation of SAFE. And therefore, it is not a bill that must be treated without a sunset clause, and which sunset clause should be deferred to a period later than 1 year. So it is an expectation that with a close collaboration between the sponsors and the relevant ministries, the minister responsible in this contest will have, as a matter of urgency, must take steps as soon as it is assented to by the president. Now that the speaker has given us indication that in about 3 weeks when we reopen, is going to be passed with alacrity and with the diligence and magnanimity of our chairman, Honorable Mahama, we will be able to see this pass before the end of May. And then once the president assents to this before the end of June, even within this year, so within.
Parliament has got its own calendar. Much as we want to push in this bill, there are equally important bills. We don't rank bills in order of importance at the chamber. And so as we process the bills, we are rest assured that this bill will be considered when we resume. And so as to whether it is of agency, it will go under a certificate of agency or not. The important thing is not having a president who refused to assent to the bill. So we have a president who will assent to it. And that is what is important. It doesn't matter what time it gets there. Again, this is a committee work. There's nothing minority and majority about this committee. And so we have all agreed that, we are good to go on this. Let me assure Ghanaians that this will be considered on the floor of Parliament with the principles of justice, fairness, and human dignity. And so nobody, no individual will be affected, or rights of the individual will be affected. We are very mindful of our obligations to international communities and treaties, but that is subject to the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana.
So you heard excerpts of how the sitting transpired today or ended today. Clearly, the call for the bill to be passed under the certificate of urgency raised a number of reactions, one of which would also be getting here on the show. So let's delve straight into the conversations we have this evening. Joining us on the line now is Alhassan Suleiman Atampuli. He's the Deputy Ranking Member on the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. Honorable Alhassan, good evening. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. Thank you as well for having me.
Okay, so clearly the issues about the LGBTQ, as of now, there is a sense of a consensus that when Parliament resumes, is going to be one of the key bills that should be immediately considered. Was that the push that some of you had, that the lackadaisical perception being expressed towards the bill was not giving it that sense of urgency, but now we are certain that when Parliament resumes, you are starting here? How does that make you feel?
Well, I think that the committee sitting, which was scheduled previously, and then it had to be rescheduled until yesterday, gave us a certain sense of, some reluctance on the part of government business and then the majority side until yesterday when it became a reality. So we are of the view that yesterday's sitting of the committee ending today should be the beginning of the fast-paced arrangements and approach that we are going to have as far as the LGBT bill is concerned. Now, we've gone through the bill clause by clause. We've considered them clause by clause. And right from the beginning, we were of the view that there isn't much to change about the bill, especially having regard to the fact that everything under this current bill was what was considered by the last Parliament. So there isn't much in terms of the substance. We can tweak with words here and there, but the ultimate meaning, the deepest part of the bill should continue to remain the same. We don't have to water anything down and carry it to the plenary for us to get it passed almost immediately. And just like you rightly said, there is broad consensus as far as this bill is concerned. And we believe that in the spirit of the consensus that we have built, we should be able to pass it, like I proposed during the sitting hearing of the committee, that we should be able to pass this under a certificate of urgency, so that Ghanaians would, trust and have confidence in the fact that whatever it is that we are doing in the House, we have them at the back of our mind.
Right. The question then arose, which clearly, drew that kind of reaction. Why would we want to pass this under the certificate of urgency? What is so pressing about this bill that Ghanaians, that Parliament would need to actually put it on the front burner?
Why not? I will also pose a question to you. Why not pass it? Why shouldn't we pass it under certificate of urgency? Is there anything that we lose if we do so? It appears that this is a bill that Ghanaians are eagerly waiting for. The clergy, traditional rulers, the youth, the older generation, every traditional area, customary law applicable in every part of the country. And about 93-94% of Ghanaians have a lot of interest in this particular. And you will recall that there was a recent poll by, API or something, that did the poll, and over 85% of Ghanaians are waiting with bated breath for Parliament to do the needful, pass this bill, and for His Excellency the President to assent to it. So what has to be done, has to be done. It doesn't look like if we delay it, we won't pass. So as the account says, so let's get it done and get it over and done with.
Right. So let's proceed. I mean, that now Parliament starts, or Parliament resumes, the bill is brought in. Would there be another debate, or it's gone through the entire process in the first Parliament? So what are the key steps it has to take when Parliament resumes?
Well, the work of the committee, would continue when we present our reports. And then if there are proposed amendments, we'll table it in the House. Then it goes through second reading. From second reading, they will go through consideration. And consideration is also clause by clause. We go, in the entire plenary will go through the consideration stage. If we have to go through second consideration, then the bill is passed. Sometimes we do this within some few hours for some laws that we have passed in the past, especially under this current regime, under this ninth Parliament. We've passed over 60 to 70% of our laws that we have passed under certificate of agency. And like I said, there isn't much we have to do about this bill. Everything has been deliberated. There has been overwhelming national discussion on every part of the 18 clauses of this bill. What else is there to discuss?
Right. So I get the sense that that's what is needed. It goes to the presidency, but help us understand that when all of this is done and it is passed and the president assents to it, how is the rollout of it going to be? Which institutions are going to be in charge in terms of implementation? And when on the street there is news that someone has been found to either exhibit or show signs of being, an LGBT member, what kinds of steps should citizens take based on how the law is structured?
Well, under the current draft bill, the minister responsible for operationalizing the act is the minister responsible for culture. But upon closer, review of the bill, and upon all my experience, in the governance of this country, I am of the view, and I made a proposal, during today's sitting, that we should consider rather making the Minister for Justice and Attorney General the minister responsible for this particular bill. Of course, the one of the reasons why we are where we are is because of the inadequacy of our law under the Criminal and Other Offences Act 29, 1960. It doesn't properly define some of the offences that we are talking about. And I'm of the considered, and I hold this very respectful view, that this is a plank of the Criminal Offences Act. And I think that it will be proper and fit for the Minister of Justice and Attorney General to be the one to implement this bill. So that is the proposal that I made. But you asked a question about reporting and then maybe vigilante-style attack of persons who are deemed or seen to be a member of the community whose actions we are prescribing. The law provides for persons to report, acts which have been, criminalized under the Act. Now, the law does not permit anybody or any group of persons to attack somebody who is seen to be involved in a homosexual or gay activity. What you have to do is to launch a report to any responsible person, a chief, assemblyman, member of parliament, DCE, or any opinion leader in your area. That is what, civilized society will do, and not to engage in vigilante justice to, attack and probably lynch persons who are deemed or seen to be engaged in homosexual activities. So the law, even though we are criminalizing the act, we are also hesitant to give a carte blanche, for people to just go on attacking. We are not in the jungle. We are governed by laws, and by all means, if you see something, you say something, and you say something to the appropriate, authority, and the necessary action will be taken. But do not take the law into your own hands. That is what we are putting inside the bill.
Right. And does the bill also talk about sanctions thereof if the individual is found guilty?
Yeah, there's a picture of sanction regime for different activities related to the bill. So if you are found to be engaged in an act of sexual, gratification with person of the same sex or any other person that has been identified under the act, there's a penalty that you have to suffer. You go through that penalty, either you pay a fine or you go into prison. So there's a graduated penalty regime, especially custodial sentence regime. For those who are engaged in it and those who are also promoting the activity, funding the activity, and then giving advocacy to the activity. All of it have been taken care of under the Act. And there's a sanction regime also for those who deliberately and knowingly try to more or less indoctrinate a person who is considered a child to go into a certain orientation or in a certain direction. That has also, been factored into the bill. Wow. So, as and when we finalize it and we'll take it to the plenary, all of this will be considered one more time by the generality of the House before finally we'll understand whether we'll pass it or not.
I mean, it seems quite elaborate, and I thank you for at least walking us through some of the key components of it. There is the concern of public education even ahead of its passage, and this is premised on the concern you raised about mob justice or mob injustice, which as it is, and people taking the law into their own hands when a suspect is seen or arrested. So talk to us about public education and how all of that factors into even pre-passage and post.
Well, I think that it's a very good call in the right direction for us to consider some kind of public education as far as the contents of the bill is concerned, so that by the time that we pass it. But if you have observed and you are operating in the media space, I'm not too sure we have had any major cases of people, visiting mob justice on persons who are seen to be homosexual. Sometimes what I do see is that they try to identify and then shame those people in public, but as to physical harm, I haven't come across that yet. But even the shaming is one that the law frowns upon. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to inform persons who are engaged in that activity and not necessarily to just impose punitive measures on them. At the end of the day, we want to also see to it that they reflect the lifestyle, the kind of human sexual family values and human sexual arrangement that we have in the overwhelming, generality of Ghanaian family homes. So that is the essence of this bill, and not necessarily to criminalize. It's more about reform, and then And then if you fail to reform, then the criminal sanctions, will be applied.
Right. Honorable, a very big thank you to you for making time to speak to us on 3FM.
It's my pleasure. Martin.
Right, and that is the Honorable Al-Hassan Suleiman Tampuli, who is the Deputy Ranking Member on the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. He is also MP for Gushegu. And so clearly this particular anti-LGBTQ bill, or the Proper Human Sexual Rights Bill, is in its latter stages, as we are told. It goes to Parliament when the House resumes. If it is passed after, consideration and debate, and the President assents to it, a lot of us all need good education regarding the implementation of the law. So we would hope that you all avert your minds to it. You can educate people in your communities, in schools, in churches, etc., about what this law means, so we'll all be on the same page in terms of respecting human rights, and then also ensuring that the laws of the land, are respected to the letter. This is 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition. We are shifting our attention now to a very disturbing story coming from parts of the Volta region. And for many of you who have been on social media or even following what's happening in the region, you'd know that the sea has been causing quite some damage in parts of the Volta region. We are told that some places have been washed away. So there was a sea defense project that was it was a project that was agreed upon, got funding for, and was implemented. So it was constructed to ensure that the sea does not do as much damage to communities in and around it. But reports we are picking up indicate that the situation has become quite serious, and chiefs of the Anglo Duko Council are calling on government to take immediate steps to prevent the imminent threats of the sea against several communities in the Anglo Enclave and beyond. Several communities in the area risk being washed away by the sea following a destruction of a sandbar that separated the sea from the Volta Lake. Our correspondent Faisal Abdul Idris, who joins us live for a quick update on how all of that, how the communities are coping with this very unfortunate development. But first of all, tell us about the number of communities. We say several, but can you give us an idea, and how close or far are they away from the sea? Right, so we'll get that for you in a moment. But before that, let's listen to one of the chiefs who've been very key on why they need immediate government intervention. We're talking about the Honorable Dan Abodakpi. If you've been in the news for some time, I'm sure you know. Let's listen to this sound input, and then we can pick up the story.
From the engineering perspective, this erosion that we've seen that has breached this sandbar, this sandbar can be removed in one night. And when it accesses this low-lying land, it will have a free passage to clear all these towns here. In fact, it will clear Anglaga. The rest of Keta will be on its way. It will clear Alakule. It will clear Anyaku and Fielengba and Sierra. And certainly it will clear Denu and Plau. It will go on, clear out to Chicago. And Adan will go because of the low-lying nature. But there will be nothing to slow the flow. The gradient from here is just low-lying. So that's why these threats is even more serious than threats that we.
So that's the voice of Zikpito Dan Abodakpi, very popular when it comes to issues of Ghanaian politics. But let's go to the phone lines now. Joining us is the Honorable Regional Minister for the Volta region, James Gunu. Mr. Gunu, good evening. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
In the audio we just played, listening to the Honorable Dan Abodakpi, he mentioned very key towns that many of us who traverse through the Volta region, or people who know about the Volta region, know about. And he says that they are all under threat. How serious is the situation, Honorable?
Thank you very much. Let me say good evening to your audience. Yes, I agree with what Awaji Thor said. Last week, I received a distress call from the district chief executive for Angoga, and then also His Royal Majesty Douglas III III sent a delegation led by the Avadada of the Anglo State, Dogby Agbefiawusu. They visited the Regional Coordinating Council and indicated to us that many communities within the Anglo State are under severe threat as a result of the devastation being caused by the tidal waves. And on Sunday, just last Sunday, I led the Regional Security Council to the community where we observed the situation and met with community leaders, and they also expressed the same concern. And we saw that even though the other side of the coastal line, that is Blekusu, Agaveji, Asala-Kope areas, are being tackled by government in terms of the sea defense project, that is the phase 2 of the Blekusu Sea Defense Project. The Fuveme side has been affected severely, so we need to do something seriously or urgently to stop the sea from causing further havoc in that area. This I have reported to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana, and the President, as usual of him, as we all know, that last year he visited the area, and even in opposition, anytime there was this tidal waves, he will go to the community and do what is expected of him. And last year he did promise that he would tackle this issue of tidal waves and ensure that our communities are protected, and that work is currently going on, as I indicated earlier, around Agaveji, Asala-Kope and Amuchinu. The project is about 40% complete now. That is expanding 8 kilometers towards Aplau. So government is tackling or finding a permanent solution to the devastation that is being caused to the area. And when the delegation visited the Regional Coordinating Council, they also mentioned the Waka project and wanted to know the status of this Waka, because they appreciate the fact that government is building the sea defense project, but they also believe that with Waka coming to support, that is the West African coastal area resilience investment program. It is a regional initiative led by the World Bank and partners to help West African countries protect and restore their coastal zone. And this project is focused on 1, coastal erosion and flooding, 2, climate change and climate change impact on coastal communities, 3, sustainable management of the coastal ecosystem, and then the fourth one is to strengthen infrastructure and livelihood along the coast. So the chief wanted to know the status of this particular project by the World Bank, and I indicated to them that I will liaise with the appropriate authorities and the ministry and then give them a feedback, because about a week ago we received a delegation from the Ministry of Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. They came, and on the same issue they wanted to give some training to the municipal and district assemblies, the 3 districts that are affected by this, and it's part of the WACA project. So they came to give us some orientation about the entire project, and later visited the 3 districts and municipalities, that is Ketu South, Keta municipalities, and the Angoga districts. And we believe that this project will also, come quickly to support government effort in protecting the coastal belt. So far, about 2,863 people have been affected, according to the statistics that the National Disaster Management Organization gave me. And yesterday, we visited the community again. We realized that their livelihood has been affected. So, NADMO, led by the Director General and other officials from the NADMO headquarters, the regional NADMO, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Ketu South was among us, that is Honorable Ablaji Gomashi, and then the Deputy Minister for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. We all went to the community and also received the items. I received the items on behalf of the affected communities and handed these items to the district chief executive so that they can at least find some livelihood for themselves, whilst government takes the necessary steps to find a permanent solution to this. And government is not resting on it also. Let me assure the good people of Gokeji, Tife, and Aklok, Toko, Puveme, and all the surrounding communities that are being affected by this devastation, that we would ensure that we protect the coast so that they can also be protected and be saved from these tidal waves. And in fact, the lack we have is that His Excellency President Muhammad is the president at the time this is happening, because the president cares about the people. He has kept faith with the good people of the Volta region for 8 years under the NPP regime. Not even a yard of the sea defense project was constructed. In addition to what we started before and lost power in 2016.
Okay.
NPP came and they never cared about the perennial devastation that the tidal waves have been causing to our people. And you will recall that
Honorable,
Napo,
kindly let me come in here, and because of time, I would want you to address this concern for me. Is it possible, or are there considerations that, or there's that certainty that when we build this sea defense, the sea set naturally will not be able to get to these communities on the back of concerns of climate change and the rise in sea levels? Is it that we are certain we can protect the people from the sea?
Please, can you come again? I didn't hear your question.
Right, my question is, I'm sure with all these policy directions and projects currently being undertaken, it is to safeguard the people. But I'm asking that in the wake of recent concerns of climate change and rising sea levels, is there a way we are saying that these projects will certainly protect the people from the sea washing into their communities? Is that a certainty? Or there are considerations we might have to move them?
You see, if you go to Agavaji, Asalakope, and Amuchinu areas, we were there yesterday as well with the Honorable Member of Parliament for the area. You see clearly that the situation over there is stable because the work is ongoing. The construction of the phase 2 of the Blekusu Sea Defense Project is going on over there. Last year and a year before last year, it was so devastating in that area, and thousands of the people were displaced. I remember very well that on the 6th of March last year, when the president visited the area and made a promise that he will fix the situation, about thousands of people were displaced. And let me also use this opportunity to thank the Exim Bank. They supported us heavily with temporary tents for the people to get shelter. And then the National Lotteries Authority, the MPA, and other corporate organizations, they supported us when the situation was so severe.
Right.
You know, but today, as the Amandi groups of companies are on site constructing the sea defense wall along that stretch, that is about 8 kilometers going towards Aplau, the situation is very stable and the communities there are safe today. But the other side of the coast, that is the Anglo side, is where the situation is now. So that tells us that you cannot protect a section leaving any part of the coast. If you protect one side and leave the other, surely the tidal wave will hit at that portion. So there is a need now for us to, protect the entire stretch. That is where I see the wisdom in West African countries coming up with this WACA project, where Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, and Benin are supposed to be benefiting as far as the coastal protection is concerned. Because if you protect one country, you leave the rest, they will definitely suffer this level of devastation.
Yes. Honorable James Gunu, thank you so much for making time to speak to us this evening.
It's my pleasure.
And he is the Volta Regional Minister and has been giving us an idea, painted a picture for us, the kind of devastation that the sea is causing communities, especially around the Volta region. And he indicated that it cuts across the entire coastal line of West Africa. So there are other African countries that all need to partner to see how best they can save their citizens who live along the coast. would update you on further updates of this particular story when we do get them. This is 3FM 92.7. Stay with us. When we return, we're taking a quick trip to South Africa.
Every woman deserves her
We are going straight to South Africa now, and the South African Police Service has strongly condemned the recent xenophobic acts of violence and intimidation directed at Ghanaian nationals and other Africans living within the Republic of South Africa. A statement posted on the X notes that these actions are not only unlawful, but they stand in direct opposition to the values of dignity, equality, and human rights upon which the South African democracy is founded. The Ministry of Police further advised the members of the public that acts of xenophobia, violence, looting, or intimidation will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Subsequently, the police have been instructed to act decisively and without hesitation in addressing these incidents, while all those found to be participating in, inciting, or supporting such criminal acts will be identified, apprehended, and brought before the courts. The Ministry of Police further called on all communities to remain calm and to reject any attempt to sow division and hatred among residents of our country. The ministry further urged community leaders, civil society organizations, and all stakeholders to work together with law enforcement agencies to prevent further violence. And let's go straight to Zoom now and engage the leader of some march and protests that we have seen on international TV. We're told that some citizens in some communities in South Africa have undertaken protest march against what they term as illegal Africans living in South Africa. Jacinta Ngobese Zuma is one of the leaders of the march. She's joined us via Zoom. Jacinta, good evening. Thank you for joining us on TV on 3FM. Jacinta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can
great,
you hear me?
great. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us all the way from South Africa to Ghana. To start with, have you undertaken any march today? How was it? What was the attendance like?
We didn't. Well, we did have a march in Escort in KZN. There was other marches happening in other places all across the country. I believe there was about 4 marches that I'm aware of that happened today. And yeah, I think the turnout did meet the expectations, as well as the people did manage to hand over memorandums to the government with regards to their dissatisfaction with their actions when it comes to our porous borders.
Right. So And that was my next question, to find out what really is the sense behind the march. What is the end objective? And you've given an indication to present a report or a solution or a suggestion to the government about issues of porous borders. But since when has this been a problem or a challenge for citizens of South Africa?
Firstly, I'd say thank you to you guys for affording us the opportunity, because it's unfortunate that when news are happening around the world, other news agencies don't want to hear the other side of the story. It becomes painted as a one story. I mean, South Africans have been living with immigrants now for over 33 years since we've had our democracy. And, we're a country that's very welcoming, very friendly and loving to people who are our neighbors. And, what is happening of late is that if you might have seen that 60% of all crimes that are happening in the country, serious crimes, and 65% of all organized crimes are being committed by foreign nationals. We've got a huge problem now of buildings being hijacked, and when they are hijacked, there's drugs, there's prostitution, there's certain countries that have made it like their area where it's no-go areas for South Africans, and we're unable to access those areas. And then it's not only that, it's because the economy of South Africa is somewhat sustainable, if I could call it that. We do have now a number of people who are, that way, that are avoiding to pay the minimum wage that is prescribed by the government of the country. And so they end up getting a lot of people from undocumented who are willing to work for, like, instead of 500 Rand a day, they probably accept like 20 Rand a day, which is a ridiculous difference. So they're becoming a replacement of sorts to South Africans who have skills, who have tax numbers, etc., because they don't want to pay them what they're meant to be paying them. It's more of like a capitalist system, and that's why South Africans are frustrated the way that they are.
Right, and so very clear points that you put out there. Talk to us about the state authorities. Have these concerns been raised with city authorities? What kinds of reactions have you gotten or responses have you gotten from them?
So I'm not sure if you're aware that currently in our country there's something called the Madlanga Commission, which is a commission that is currently investigating the South African Police Service because of its top leaders being involved in the most heinous of crimes like drugs and being part of cartels. Unfortunately, we have a country where our law enforcement has a lot of criminals who are part of it, who end up taking bribes and are so corrupt. Of course, not all of them, but there's a large number of them that have compromised the laws of the country in order to take money. So instead of arresting illegal immigrants, what they would do is they would take them and they'd take some money from them and start making it like a business to arrest people who are not supposed to be in the country, and then they just let them go. Of course, this doesn't solve the problem. It ends up creating even a bigger problem. So when you go to the police and you raise this issue, of course they're going to listen and they'll have some responses that they give you. But what's happening on the ground paints a picture of South Africans who are frustrated, but don't even have an option of going to the police to get assistance because those very same police are corrupt.
Right. So you are telling us about a problem where instead of they giving you assistance, that area for assistance itself is corrupted. But how does that help the situation where people are now taking the law into their own hands? So when you find like a fellow African who is not doing right or is doing a job which a South African ordinarily wouldn't have taken the pay for, like you've explained, how do you handle those people when you cite or see these kinds of issues that you have enumerated as the key challenges? What is the best way of addressing it? Because we've seen videos of people being attacked in some places, some have died. as a result of these attacks. So it's looking like
No.
a banana republic. How is that playing out, and how do you advise people who have similar sentiments like you've shared address these problems?
Well, firstly, nobody has died. And secondly to that, they haven't been attacks. That's why we've been trying to caution the public about painting a certain narrative around the issue that's happening, because it makes it seem worse than it actually is. So what has happened, there have been several marches. Of course, that's allowed. It's constitutional. We have a right to march in our own country and have a memorandums to government. And then what happens now is that South Africans have taken, most of them, like there's unions. If I can tell you about LACO. LACO is an organization that is a labor organization that is meant to protect the rights of South Africans in the workplace. So they can go and find out why these certain places are not hiring South Africans, etc., etc., and that's exactly what they're doing. But for us, we've got a cleanup campaign where we're cleaning up the streets and on the side of the streets and making sure that it's clean, which is allowed by law. And when we do that, there are police present at the time, and that's why we end up having people running away, because they're scared that we see police present, they can't hang around in that specific area anymore. But I want to take you to that specific incident that has led us to be where we are now, where there is accusations of a Ghanaian was apparently attacked, which is strange for us, because nowhere in those videos that we've seen on the internet was the manhunt. So what happened is there's South Africans who call members of the community to say, for example, there's a specific man in my yard, I no longer need them to run their business, I don't want to touch there anymore, but they refuse to. Then South Africans will go to that particular place to find out why that particular person doesn't want to leave. Are they in the country legally in the first place? And most of the time they find out that it's not the case. So it's not a matter of people just going around hunting for people who are foreign nationals and removing them from the country. Of course, that's not the way that it's done. Like I said, in most of the things that are happening, there is a police presence, but unfortunately sometimes they don't show the police because they don't want them to be a common feature in the videos. Something is happening. In this specific video, he spoke to the guy, explained to him that you came to South Africa on a visitor's visa, your time in the country expired, and you continue to stay. In fact, you continue to run businesses, which is not allowed by law. So when we say that we're trying to build Africa for all Africans to be able to come into our respective countries as neighbors and as friends, we can't abuse each other to a point where we end up fighting each other for our own resources, because you as Ghanaians have your own country that has a responsibility to you to provide certain things. But if you need the help of South Africans, you can always ask them to come and assist here and there. That's perfectly acceptable, and we do the same. But it's unfair to expect that everyone can just walk into South Africa and start looking for jobs and doing crime and having businesses and breaking the laws when it comes to the restrictions on their visas, etc. And that is the cry that South Africans have, and that is the message that we wish that our neighboring countries could understand, that there's no hatred, there's no xenophobia. All we want is for our laws to be respected, because currently we've got millions of people that we don't know who they are. They come from all parts of Africa. I mean, our biggest problem is with Zimbabwe and Malawi, Mozambique, and Ethiopians and Somalians and Nigerians. Those are the ones that we've got the biggest problem with, and not forgetting those Pakistanis and Chinese now who are trying to set up shop. So those are the problems that we have. Unfortunately, when you're enforcing laws, you can't say, oh, you're one Ghanaian, and there's millions of Zimbabweans. Unfortunately, if we're saying it's the law, we have to enforce it with everyone.
Perfect point you make. But what kind of image do you think this paints about South Africa? I know about South Africa tourism, which is, pushing the boundaries to get Africans to visit South Africa, to experience the country. We have other, nationals from elsewhere being enticed to come to South Africa to appreciate the kind of history you have and your tourism. But when these kinds of reportage do go out, how do you perceive it? And I'm not sure you are saying you've not seen xenophobic attacks where people have actually been physically attacked. Maybe not in the current video, which has brought us where we are, but we've seen other videos from South Africa, and it is all painted as South Africans attacking Africans. So that's the narrative out there. How do you think we can cleanse this image whilst we are still inviting people to come and do legitimate business in South Africa?
Can I just ask you one question? Have you seen videos of foreign nationals attacking South Africans? Have you seen videos of the crimes being committed by foreign nationals in Africa? Have you seen the kidnapped children, the drugs, the abuse, the prostitution? Have you seen the amount of the one that happened just this week, where a South African woman was beat down by foreign nationals on the streets for selling, for trying to clean up the streets? Have you seen the children in South Africa that have died because of these foreigners who create their own food and sell them in their own tuck shops? Have you ever seen anything like that?
Well, Jacinta, I mean, I have seen one such video, but if you are painting the picture of criminality, I would not think that crime is committed in just one country, but the concern here is Africans attacking fellow Africans, and the narrative largely is we don't want you in our country. So it's different from crime. Crime everywhere is bad. Crime is crime. But when another individual is attacking a fellow black person, it's a challenge.
No, but that's what I'm trying to explain to you. No, but this is what I'm trying to explain to you. That is a narrative that is being pushed by the media. You can't say South Africans are attacking foreign nationals, whereas South Africans are defending themselves against foreign nationals. Currently, like I said, 60% of crimes committed in this country, serious crimes, and 65% of all organized crime is by foreign nationals. Does that sound like a statistics of people who are doing good things in the country, and the citizens of that country are expected to sit back and do anything? Because if we say or do anything, suddenly there's going to be claims that we're xenophobic. That is not fair, because we saw how Ghanaians, and we were actually proud of how you took to the streets and you were marching against Nigerians who are doing the exact same thing in your country as they were doing in ours, having Igbo kings, having drugs, prostitution, etc. And we were in support of Ghanaians. There's nowhere that we said, no, Ghanaians are horrible people, they're xenophobic, you did that out of hate. Do that out of hatred. You did that out of a love for your own country, and a sense that you do not want to see your own country going through all of these things because of foreign nationals. Do South Africans not deserve the same thing, to protect their own country? Is it wrong when we do it? There's the attacks that you're talking about, I still insist, most of them have been misinterpreted. There's also one where a South African guy who was stealing cell phones was being hit by other men who he was stealing from. Suddenly, to the rest of the world, that story turned around and it was someone being hit because they're a foreign national.
Right.
That's not the truth, and I'm trying to explain that the media is the one that's giving us the biggest problem by not telling our story in the correct manner, that we also deserve a right to protect our country. It's unfair to bring in 60% of criminals. They're even surpassing our own South Africans in terms of crimes. That's not fair, and no country should be expected to just keep importing criminals, because if we don't allow that, then we're labeled as xenophobic.
Hello, Jacinta. Unfortunately, yes, I can hear you. So you kindly conclude on that point, and then we can bring the conversation to an end.
No, that's all I was saying. I was saying, as much as you guys have a right to protect your own country, we have a right to protect our own as well.
Right.
And our government has failed us. We are not promoting violence. We are not promoting people being hit. But all we're asking for is for us other people to respect our country, respect our laws, and respect us as South Africans. Because it's come to a point where foreigners don't respect us so much that they tell us to our faces that we're not going anywhere. Your government loves us so much they would allow us to do anything. It's not fair to be a native of a country and have to put up with such ill treatment of yourself in your own country. It's really not fair. We don't have a problem with other Africans. All thing is, if we respect each other as neighbors, then we carry ourselves and behave ourselves in a way that seeks to promote that kind of love and respect for each other as neighbors.
Absolutely. Well, we would have to leave it here for now. Thank you very much, Jacinta, for making time to speak with us. Would you be coming to Ghana anytime soon?
Love to come to Ghana. As I said, I'm very disappointed that it's come to this, because Ghana is one of the countries that don't give us a hard time. You know, we've always been good neighbors. We've always been respectful to each other. And it's so sad to see that this one incident has been blown out of proportion to the point that it makes it seem like we're rivals, whereas we've been such great neighbors. I mean, we've been supportive, and we know Ghanaian people are very kind, they're very respectful, they're very friendly, and we plead with you guys to please don't feed into the media narrative of what is going on, and rather ask us, and we will go out of our way to make sure that we maintain a peaceful and respectful relationship with you.
Jacinta Ngobese Zuma, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening.
Thank you.
We are grateful. And so she is one of the leaders of the march that took place earlier today in one of the provinces in South Africa, giving us a rather interesting perspective that has not been part of the general narrative, bringing in the perspective of the fact that they believe that the system that could have helped correct some of the ills they have observed as citizens, the system itself is corrupted, for which reason citizens are trying to defend themselves rather than the narrative that has been put out there that South Africans are attacking other African nationals. But like we indicated, the South African police say that they are investigating the issue. They have also set out priorities as to why and how people should go about any of some of these issues. The government of South Africa, we are told, also says they're going to be investigating any of such issues when they do come up. So trust us to keep you updated when we do get any developments from this. This is 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition, and some of the messages that have come in from many of you who've been listening to us on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube. We have this from Babana from Medina. What should we do to South Africans in Ghana? Tit for tat? No, Baba. No tit for tat. You heard the Foreign Affairs Minister yesterday say that Ghana will not be, there will never be a report about reprisal attacks regarding these xenophobic concerns coming in from South Africa. Obua from Nima says, what an impudence trying, and this is in reference to the narrative that was shared by Jacinta, a resource person from South Africa. And another one we have here, I said, Martin, my name is Kwame from Choco. What is the South African lady saying? Is she justifying the attack? Well, I'm sure you heard it for yourself. She largely went on the tangent of the fact that the police service and the state apparatus of the city authorities that can be of help when some of these issues come up, they themselves are not, cannot do it or have been corrupted, more or less. So they do not trust in reporting it to them. And then we also have Aaron Babako Kokomesa, who says, the violence targeting African migrants is not just a humanitarian failure, it is a direct violation of the principles of Ubuntu and the Africa Continental Free Trade vision of a unified borderless continent. All right. So thank you so much for your messages that have come in. My name is Martin Asiedu-Dartey. This has been Hot Edition. Have a good evening.